Latin America is one of the most culturally rich regions in the world, spanning across dozens of ethnicities and cities across the United States. In my opinion, there are few places in America that do Puerto Rican culture better than Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My name is Caden Rivera, and I've grown up here my entire life, raised by my very white mother and very Puerto Rican father. One side of my family represents exactly what it means to be Latin American, children of families who emigrated here and then brought their culture with them. I've seen countless examples of Puerto Rican and Latin history throughout places in inner city Pittsburgh and even downtown. And today we'll explore some of those places and even some places in history. Events that shape the culture of today and can hopefully continue to shape the culture for the future. This documentary will show what it means to be Puerto Rican in Pittsburgh. Puerto Ricans first started to see significant growth in the 1940s and 50s. Pittsburgh is known for its industrial demands, so Puerto Ricans came here for the steel mill jobs. Whether those jobs were worth it or not was debatable with working conditions and wages and minimum hours, but they were immigrants and they needed jobs. Over time, Puerto Ricans began dominating the Spanish-speaking community of Pittsburgh, increasing in numbers exponentially after World War II. Boricuas, another proud name for Puerto Ricans living in Pittsburgh, solved the labor crisis by working on more labor-focused jobs. Puerto Ricans also liked that we were cheaper than New York City, so they moved from there to here to pay less for lodging and food and everything. So if you're able to take one thing away from this video, it's that living in Pittsburgh compared to New York, it's a lot cheaper. We're a lot better at sports. Now, I can't mention Pittsburgh sports without mentioning the best baseball player in Pittsburgh history, Jose Pagan. No, I'm kidding. Of course, who I'm actually talking about is Roberto Clemente.
The drive in a deep right center. Frank Robinson going back, and that ball's off the wall. Clemente digging for two, and he's in there with a stand-up double to the opposite field. Typical Clemente hit.
Through the middle on another bouncing hit. It sends Skinner home, and the Pirates have a 3-1 lead.
Now, everybody in this room knows who Roberto Clemente is, an absolute icon in Pittsburgh, playing 18 seasons with our very own Pirates. Clemente was born in 1934 in Barrio San Anton, Puerto Rico, to laundress Luisa Walker and sugarcane laborer Melchor Clemente. Roberto represents the strength, perseverance, and honor of the Puerto Rican people. After playing in Puerto Rican leagues at just 17 years old, the Dodgers and Braves both extended massive offers for Roberto to come and play for their team. Although the Braves offered Clemente almost double the money, he chose to go to the Dodgers per his family's request. Clemente didn't see much playing time and was sent to their international team in Montreal shortly after being signed. Clemente later said it felt like they hid him as too many immigrants on one white baseball team would upset most Caucasian fans. However, after your very own Pittsburgh Pirates signed him in 1955, he played 18 incredible seasons with us right up until the end of his career. With the Pirates, Clemente joined the 3,000 hit club, won 4 batting titles, 12 Golden Gloves, 2 World Series, and 1 league MVP. On top of being one of the best baseball players of his era, Clemente was one of the greatest humanitarians of the 20th century. Clemente became known for giving relief and aid to those in Pittsburgh and his hometown of Puerto Rico, becoming known for his gratitude and his love. When earthquakes tore through Nicaragua in 1972, Roberto Clemente personally went with planes filled with resources he planned to give to the refugees. After a terrible crash from his plane shortly after departure, Roberto Clemente was never seen again. Roberto represented more than just Puerto Rican culture. He represented Pittsburgh itself. His legacy still lives on right here at the Roberto Clemente Bridge. I know every person in this room has most likely heard of Roberto Clemente. It'd be a little insane if you haven't. But his impact was so much more than just his baseball. He gave confidence to so many Hispanic people in Pittsburgh and allowed the community to flourish. He brought in so many more Hispanic businesses and customs, like restaurants and dancing classes. This brings me to my favorite part of Puerto Rican culture. In the past, Puerto Rican cuisine was a lot less known within Pittsburgh, which stemmed from a lack of representation. But over the years, its flavor and cultural impact have transformed its image into a vibrant, growing scene, largely driven by authentic family recipe-focused spots launched in the 2020s.
Authentic restaurants and flavors began popping up very soon after this burst, especially in the downtown Pittsburgh area, including Mount Washington.
Originally, I planned to go to Secretas de Mis Abuelos, which is credited as one of the first restaurants to bring authentic Puerto Rican flavor into Pittsburgh. Then I did a little more research and realized that while the owner is Puerto Rican, they actually make more Mediterranean-styled Puerto Rican food, which is terrible.
They tried to modernize it and make it more for a Caucasian audience, being in downtown Pittsburgh and all, but it just made the food worse.
The secondary owner of the restaurant is just some white guy. So I did some additional searching and I found Flavor of Puerto Rico right here in Mount Washington. I am not exaggerating when I say that this is the best Puerto Rican food I have ever had. Me and my father had an excellent time and ate some of the best food I've ever seen in a Puerto Rican restaurant, especially in Pittsburgh. They brought an incredible perspective on Puerto Rican food and culture, especially in the design of their restaurant and the quality of their meals. The owners, Victor Schmidt and Yvette Rodriguez Schmidt, were given an article in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette on their upbringings and the history of their restaurant. Victor told the Post-Gazette that my wife taught me because she fed our children this food every day. I love a lot of different ethnic food and my wife is Puerto Rican, so this truly is like a marriage made in heaven. It makes me incredibly happy to see such an incredible flavor beautifully represented in Pittsburgh, and I hope to see more like it in the future with restaurants just like this. Not Secretas de Mis Abuelos. Don't go there. They put abuelos. Why would it be the secret of both of their grandfathers, not just one grandfather, or like their grandmother? Whatever. To finish off this dive into the culture of Puerto Rico and Pittsburgh, I thought I'd end with interviews on two absolute experts on the subject. Both of these individuals I interviewed personally moved to Pittsburgh as Puerto Ricans during the big explosion of Puerto Ricans around the 1990s. One of these experts is my dad.
Aww.
When I asked my father to describe his experience traveling to Pittsburgh with his family and how it changed his life, he said that he came down in the early 90s getting out of the South Bronx and the crack epidemic in New York City. It was a chance for a better life. They moved down to a farm in Rough Creek and Castle Hill projects. There were better opportunities in schooling, a little different than other versions because he has more European blood, so it was easier for him than his other more tan cousins. It was easier for him because being from Puerto Rico, he was like an alien from space to other white kids. They thought they still had lions and tigers out there on the island. Being New Yorican, which is another way to say a New York-born Puerto Rican, made it a bit different, but they all together moved there for the better experience. When I asked him to explain how, to him, Puerto Rican culture influenced his daily life and the culture he sees in Pittsburgh, he said that he would definitely say that the food we eat, having that natural hustler's mentality of constantly being on the go and being able to multitask and speak and move fast. As far as in the city, he feels like he's seen the culture's ups and downs, but politically it seems like Puerto Ricans took about 5 steps backwards. Nobody here is really trying to distinguish between the Puerto Ricans and the Venezuelans and such. To them, we're all really just Mexican. Pittsburgh is a great melting pot, so we just got to keep putting those things in our culture out there further. Finally, I asked him what he thought about Hispanic culture finding its own place in America, and especially in American history in Pittsburgh. My father said that to him that's more for the individual person, but it's nice to see your culture take part in the American history of it all the different nationalities. The first war they took place in, or the first city or railroad they've ever built is important. We've been in America for such a long time, he guesses being a generation removed makes him think about it more in an American perspective. the Boricua Bombardiers were the first people to participate in wars for Puerto Ricans, or whatever they're called. We've been around since the Jets and the Sharks and all the people that come through. Puerto Rican or not, we've all adapted to each other in a way. But Puerto Ricans are just a little different.
Pennsylvania, and it may be most appropriate that we're getting close to the end of the day, but we have one of Pittsburgh's finest with us on set today. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Loyal of Loyalty Weddings and Events. How you doing, brother?
Oh, we're great. Doing fine. Thanks for having me.
One of the finest and
Happy
one
to
of
be here.
the freshest.
I like that. I like it. I try.
Yesterday,
The second person I'll be interviewing is my father's cousin, Loyal Martinez. Loyal still teaches Hispanic culture and dance right here in dancing classes and DJing here in Pittsburgh. As mentioned in this recording, he actually runs the leading DJ and wedding company in the tri-state area, Loyal DJing Productions. When I personally interviewed Loyal, he said that moving from New York City to Western Pennsylvania was more culture shock than anything, but I was prepared and knew what I was getting into. It was something that took time for him to adapt to, because it was just a different environment and culture. Now, were people ready to embrace me? Were they ready to have somebody so different around? I don't think they were. The way I spoke, the way I dressed, the color of my skin were just so different from what they usually were. I felt like it was life-changing for the better. Facing that decision was one of the most important parts of my life. My family all had different experiences, but I found it difficult to walk away from the life that I had in New York City. When asked about Puerto Rican culture, Loyal said that me being who I am, my background, my culture, comes with certain personality traits, a certain style that I'm into. We can easily get caught up in an environment change and mold who we are towards the norm of where you are. If everyone here in Pittsburgh is golfing, fishing, listening to country music, that's what you're going to do because you want to connect and fit in. When in Rome, do what the Romans do. I don't do that. I embrace all of my Puerto Rican culture, how I dress, the music I listen to, the way I speak. I'm not saying it's wrong to change, I'm just saying that I didn't care for that because I know who I am and I'm confident in who I am. That's just the way I'm going to be for the rest of my life. Me being Puerto Rican, me listening to salsa and hip-hop and bringing all of those influences to my area is very rare where I live. Finally, I asked Loyal Martinez what he thinks about Hispanic culture finding its own place in America. He said, I think it's great. I think it's something that a lot of Hispanic families and people and influencers need to focus on because it's sometimes not as embraced as it should be. Depending on where you are, of course, in many places in this country, there are more Hispanics, so it's easier to embrace it in those areas. But when you're in an era where it's almost non-existent, you have to make some choices. Do you continue to bring that culture to where you are, or do you not? I think it's something that we need to start thinking a little bit more about. Just because you're not as ingrained as your mother or your grandmother in your culture doesn't mean you have to embrace it any less. This country is still learning. There's still a lot of room to grow in that area. Staying true to who you are is important for letting your culture shine. Researching and doing this documentary has really made me understand how much Puerto Rican culture has affected my life and Pittsburgh itself. Going downtown and sharing these experiences with my dad really showed me that the cuisine and the way we live is a lot different from everybody else, but it's how I was raised and I'm very proud of that. The history of Puerto Ricans and us immigrating into this huge melting pot we call Pittsburgh is really a beautiful thing, and I hope to see more and more growth from it as the years go by. My name is Ken Rivera, and thank you so much for watching my documentary on